Hi, everybody. For this week with poetry, we're moving along with it. I first talk about in this first paragraph about what we learned last week. What is poetry? What is prose? Prose is what this looks like right here. Sentences, paragraphs, nothing too beautiful about it. It's functional. It has a set format. It has margins, sentences, paragraphs. It's locked into this set format. And again, it has a purpose, which is I just want to tell you stuff. I just want to inform you. Poetry is very different. It does want to inform you, like about Ballad of Birmingham, but it wants to do so much more than inform. It wants to give you an emotion in some way. And it is musical and it is condensed. It's shortened down to very little form, to very little space. And then with the form, it can take any form. It could have um, stanzas and rhyming, or it could be one word per line. It could be a word right here, another word here, another word here. Could be in a circle, all kinds of things. So I summarize that here saying poetry is a condensed musical language that has no particular form, and that it is informative and emotional. So it's those five things. And what we're looking at now is a new, I'm sorry, it's not a new concept, it's an old concept that we learned from the very beginning, but it's so present in poetry, I thought it worthwhile to give it a whole week, and that is imagery. Now, before I go into it, it's worthwhile going to see how well you're doing with all these literary terms we have learned before. So go on to Quizlet. I have this link. I'm not sure it will take you there exactly, but go there, log in, and find my class and see how you do with the flashcards. Maybe have the definition and see if you know the word. You can flip it on over and review it that way. Okay, so imagery. Imagery is the use of all five senses in the language that is very concrete and very specific. We saw it a lot in the poem Oranges way back when, that poem about a young boy on his first date with a little girl. They go to a store, she wants a chocolate that costs too much, and he puts down the nickel and the orange, and the woman at the counter understands, gives it to him. Outside, she unwraps the chocolate and he holds the orange in his hand like it's a fire. So that whole thing, you might recall, is full of imagery. So we're well acquainted with that. And everything we've been reading ever since the beginning, I've tried to highlight that about the importance of imagery. So it's certainly very, very present in poetry. So we're looking at two short poems here, couple of questions for you, and also I'll have you try your hand at writing one of them. Here's the first one by Robert Browning, written 150 years ago maybe, to a woman who became his wife, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who was a very famous poet herself. She had a sonnet, um, uh, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Maybe you've heard of that. So he wrote about this, where he used to jump in a boat late at night and secretly row across the bay to where she lived, and he would jump out of the boat and run across a field and tap, tap, tap at the window, and she would light a match to see if it was him. It's a beautiful little poem. Let me read it for you. Meeting at night. The gray sea and the long black land, and the yellow half moon, large and low, and the startled little waves that leap in fiery ringlets from their sleep, as I gain the cove with pushing prow, and quench its speed in the slushy sand. Then a mile of warm sea-scented beach, 3 fields to cross till a farm appears, a tap at the pane, the quick, sharp scratch and blue spurt of a lighted match, and a voice less loud through its joys and fears than the two hearts beating each to each. So try to read that to yourself. It's good to read these aloud. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I think you get the point here. Then I ask you a couple of questions that focus on imagery and also your general reaction to it. So live with that poem for a bit before you go to the second poem, which is a famous poem by William Carlos Williams. He's an interesting character, a doctor, a pediatrician, and between patients, as he was waiting for them to come in, he would jot down little poems, and this is one of them. And in this one, the title, This Is Just to Say, is really kind of the first line of the poem. This is just to say, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious. So sweet and so cold. Again, read that one aloud to yourself a couple of times, and then I ask you a couple of questions about it, imagery centric, and also your reaction to it. And also something else where, I've talked about with poetry that you can break all forms and do whatever you want with it. This one has no punctuation at all. What do you make of that? And just one word that's capitalized. Any thoughts about that? And then at the end, I say, okay, now it's your time to try to write your own poem like this. It's a really quick poem to do. Start it with the same title, This Is Just to Say, and now, like this, you are addressing someone and you have taken something of theirs, or I don't know, worn something of theirs, and now you're kind of apologizing, but it's not that serious of an apology. So give it a try, replicate this kind of language, and see what you can do with that down here. Okay, so that's it for poetry. Then we're going to move on to the next part, which is more of the book, the memoir Serendib. Okay, thanks.